Welcome back to Dr. Supercoach YouTube for Pigs round 24 captaincy recommendations. Here we go, the final round of the Supercoach season. Your last chance for that ranking rise or to take out league glory. I hope all your wildest dreams come true. I've had a funny 2 weeks with my vice captains. Both weeks I've been weighing up either a Nasaya or a Cherry VC. And both weeks, I went the wrong option. I went Cherry the first week and Nasaya last week. If I had to flip them, that would have been amazing. But it didn't really hurt me that much, because both weeks I've had Marcus Bontempelli bringing it home for me. And last week he netted me a lovely 148 as captain. So we're all good. Now this week, I am pretty excited about what we're going to see this week from some of these players. There are a lot of highly owned guys with plenty to play for heading into round 24. And I think there's going to be some big scores from some very popular players this week. So you're going to need a thumping captain shout to win your league finals. But that's why you're here. I've had a bit of fun playing with the player pitches this week, going with a bit of something different. You know, it's the last week of the round. Let's have some fun. Let's celebrate the year. Don't necessarily have to go with the same old boring default pitcher. So let's have some fun. But anyway, let's get into these captains. Number 3 vice captain is Zack Butters. Look, Zack Butters, Friday night footy, Adelaide Oval, Gold Coast Suns. Do I need to say any more? That description should speak for itself. But if you would like some more justification, consider this. The Suns have been one of the easiest midfields to score against all year. Although they are now showing up as slightly hard over the last few weeks, so maybe they've improved a little bit. But regardless, Gold Coast back in their own guns like Rao, Anderson and Toot to get the job done. And they're just not tagging anymore. They haven't really tagged this year at all. And we know the filthy things that Zack Butters can do when not tagged. Remember that 100-point first half a few weeks ago against Sydney? Or the 154 against West Coast? Well, those games were also at Adelaide Oval. It's a venue he regularly has his spike scores at. And he could have another one. Butters has somehow been flying under the Supercoach radar this year, despite averaging 117 across the season. Given the obvious captain choices this week, I don't think many people will be considering Butters as a VC option, but I'm here to tell you maybe you should think about it. This could be a real league-winning pod VC move that your opponent might regret not doing themselves. And, you know, he's one of those guys that could just take a league final away from you. Or from your opponent. Number 2, Max Gawn. Young, skinny little Max Gawn is the best player in Supercoach this year, at least from a total points perspective. He deserves that mantle once again. Durability, consistency, and at times dominance. He comes into this game with a 3-round average of 139 and a 5-round average of 138. Talk about being stable. This week he matches up with Darcy Cameron, who for most of the year has shown up as kind of a neutral opponent for Ruckman, right in the middle. Not really hard, not really easy. Although in recent weeks, Darcy has allowed some big scores. Maybe he's tiring a little bit. He's been shouldering the load for Collingwood all season. Collingwood did say they were going to try and give him a rest and give him a week off, and then they just never did. So who knows? Maybe Darcy's a little tired. So Witts had a 113, Ford had a 111, and Meek had a 148. Those are the scores I'm talking about Darcy giving up recently, and while a 113 and 111 might not seem that impressive, they are well above those players' season averages. And if Gawn even goes a little bit above his season average, you're looking at a very easy 130, with the ability to spike score and take your matchup away from your opponent in one move if he gets off the chain. The All-Australian ruck matchup battle is going to come down to Gawn versus Grundy, and you would think with one huge final game, Max might just be able to wrap it up and secure an all-time record. I think it would be his 8th blazer. So why not VC someone like that? Someone with the ability to go massive and take it away from your opponent, and someone still with a bit to prove in this last week. Number 1 option, Nick Dacos. Nick sits as my favourite vice-captain this week. It's another Friday night VC shout, and this is a man with a 5-round average of 138 and coming up against a team that he loves to play against. This is a team that he scored 186 on in the corresponding game of last year in the last round. 186. And look, Nick Dacos has a 169 and a 177 in his last 5 games. So this is someone in form. This is someone with an elite ceiling and plenty to play for. And when I say plenty to play for, I mean a Brownlow medal. This is an award that has already eluded him twice in his young career, and an award that is absolutely within his reach if he puts out another big game in this one. To make matters easier, the Demons are the 5th easiest matchup for inside midfielders. They've recently given up scores of 140 to Dylan Moore, 148 to Ed Richards, 125 to Bont, 113 to Cripps, and 123 to Sheasel. Melbourne have shown a want to tag this year, but I usually don't let that stop me with my vice-captain recommendations, simply because if they don't get tagged, they've got this easy matchup and you could be looking at a huge score. I do absolutely consider a tag when I'm looking at my captain, but for my vice-captain, I kind of just disregard it a bit because they could still, if they don't get tagged, they're off the chain. And look, a fired-up Nick Dacos wanting to poll 3 votes and give himself a really good chance for the Brownlow, man, this is not one that I would be betting against. Pod, Zack Heeney. I made a mistake a few weeks ago when weighing up whether to recommend Errol or Isaac for my pod recommendation against the Kangaroos. I went the wrong way, but I'm not going to make that mistake twice. It's Heeney time. An up and down scorer, he's got a 197 and a 75 in his last 5 games. That shows his variance, but I really like the matchup here. A date with the bottom of the ladder West Coast Eagles, a team that he has scores of 165, 150 and 112 in their last 3 meetings. You heard that right. 165 and 150 the last 2 times he's played the Eagles. Look, he's played the Eagles 10 times in his career and he's averaged over 100 in those games. And that's despite him playing as a forward for most of his career. And now, West Coast are the easiest matchup for inside midfielders over the last 10 games. They are leaking points all over the place. I've targeted the Eagles twice in the last 2 weeks with Dawson and Bont, and I've got scores of 146 and 148 from those targets. That is elite. Heeney may well join that club, and he might make it 3 from 3 recommendations to go 145 on the West Coast in August. Let's see. Now, you've got to wait until Saturday night for this one, but I'm very confident in this either as a VC or a C. You could go either way. And as a side note, if you've got one trade left and you are looking to bring in a pod to win your league finals, I'm calling that this is the guy to bring in. This is the man you want. I mean, look at him. How could you resist? Now, captains. After this, I've got 5 proper, safe, high-scoring captains, but it can't be a round 24 captain video without mentioning a key forward or 2 with an easy matchup and the chance for an insane spike score to finish the year. And there are 2 options here. Both Jeremy Cameron and Riley Thilthorpe have elite matchups. Cameron plays Richmond, who are the 5th easiest matchup for key forwards, and they've just lost Nick Vlosten to, I think it was a broken leg. Plus, look, Jez is going to win the Coleman medal here, and if he gets a bag, he could very well approach 100 goals during finals campaign. So he's got a bit to play for. Hopefully Geelong are going to be looking to feed him, and it's against Richmond. A depleted Richmond as well. This could get brutal. But then on the other side, Riley Thilthorpe. A date with North Melbourne, who are the easiest matchup for key forwards in the league. They've been the easiest matchup for key forwards in all year. Key forwards have been absolutely destroying this North Melbourne defence. And Riley will be wanting to finish the season with a big haul. He's still looking to push his case for the All-Australian squad. I think there's a chance he makes it. He's probably got to have a really monster game here, but he's got something on the line to play for. And if you have the trades to fix an Isaac Rankin problem and you don't have the cash to get, or you don't have the cash or the DPP to get Isaac Heeney, then I think one of these 2 big men could solve your problem. And they could destroy your Liga opponent. The question is, do you have the balls to captain either of them? That's up to you to decide. Alright, I've just given you 2 very risky key forward options, so it's time to settle down with some super safe, super reliable, super tank. Nank the tank. Nank is normally rock solid. He's been down a bit lately. He hasn't been able to replicate his breakout season of 2024, but he's still been serviceable. And he still has been able to take advantage of some of the easier matchups. And that's what he gets this week. A 1v1 with Geelong, who are always one of the ruck matchups that I target in this video. Head-to-head with Reece Stanley and Mark Blitzarves often leads to some big points for our players. As I said, Nank himself hasn't been in great form recently, but he has had some tough matchups. I mean, he's had to play Wits and Cherry in the last month, so that's never going to go well. But prior to that, he had a 132 against Essendon, and he had a 92 against Geelong, but that was huge unders. His stats in that game were actually quite good. He just turned the ball over a lot. He had 37 hitouts the last time he played Geelong earlier in the year. And if he can do that again and keep his disposal efficiency under control, I think this is just a really, really safe 120, 125, somewhere around that mark. But we don't want safe. We want big scores. And the next four, I think, could absolutely go off their chops. Jordan Dawson, number 4. Jordan is so fun to recommend in these videos. He's so predictable when it comes to his spike scores. He seems to be someone that really takes advantage of an easy matchup. I mean, there was that 146 against West Coast a few weeks ago. He's also got a 149 and a 157 in his past 6 weeks. So that's 3 games out of his last 6. He's gone over 145. That's really good form. This week, he gets another easy matchup. He gets North Melbourne at Marvel Stadium. The Kangaroos are the 3rd easiest matchup for inside midfielders over the last 10 games, and they've had the top mantle for that award for a lot of the season. It has been the big-bodied inside clearance tackle midfielders that have really obliterated North. You know, guys like Libba, guys like Heeney, plenty others. Dawson does that really, really well. Did you know that Jordan Dawson is averaging 11 tackles per game over his last month? How good is that? The man gets amongst it. The Crows are charging for top spot on the ladder and their captain is leading from the front. This one could be a bloodbath, and I think he's going to handsomely reward SuperCoach owners. You could do a lot worse than putting your season in the hands of the best player in the best team in the league against one of the worst. It could win you your league finals. And Jordan, from a personal perspective, he will want to be the captain of the number 1 seed team at the end of the year. He's got a bit to play for. Also the Brownlow. I think he's a sneaky chance to poll really high up there in the Brownlow. So if he can rack up another 3 votes here, I think there's some motivation that way as well. But here we go. Number 3, Marcus Bontempelli. Oh, we love the Bont, don't we? The highest SuperCoach average of any player this season, and likely to finish the year with an average over 130 if he scores how I expect him to this week. A matchup with Freo isn't necessarily an easy one on paper, with the Dockers sitting as just a slightly negative matchup. But this is Marcus. This is Bont. This is a guy with a 5-round average of 144. Actually, let me read out his last 7 scores. 133, 174, 126, 169, 151, 125, and 148. That is bonkers. And we need to trust him. Not to mention, Freo have been his bunny team lately. He's got scores of 162, 102, and 182 in their last 3 meetings. Let me lay that out a bit further. He has a 3-round average of nearly 150 against the Dockers. He loves playing Freo. The man can score. And further to that, he's rounding out the season at Marvel Stadium. This is a venue he's averaged at 142 this season. 142 from 10 games. The Bont's averaging 142 at Marvel this year. What an absolute machine. And the Bont isn't playing a dead rubber here in round 24. Oh no. The Bulldogs are currently sitting in 8th spot, 1 win behind their opponent, who is Fremantle. And the Bulldogs have a better percentage. So it very well could be whoever wins this game makes finals, and whoever loses packs up their bags and heads home for the season. You know you want that game-winning Bont in your SuperCoach team. The lovely thing about Marcus here is that he plays on the Sunday, and there aren't many great options in the other Sunday games. So he becomes the ideal fallback option for us to allow us to have a VC crack at any of the high-scoring Friday or Saturday guys we have playing. The question just becomes which VC we go with, because this is the perfect captain. Number 2, Bailey Smith with a little sprinkling of Max Holmes. Here we go again, Bailey and Max. Both being recommended because I can't split them. Nah, actually that's not quite true this time. I am going to split them for you. I'm going with Bailey Smith today, but I wanted to mention Max Holmes here as I think he's still going to absolutely dominate the Tigers and score well. He just doesn't need his own slide. I think if you don't own Baz, you can very much consider Max. Consider them a pair. Maybe VC Max and C Bailey. Nah, don't do that. Don't do that, really. The reason I love Max and Bailey in this game is the Tigers matchup. Richmond are the second easiest opponent for midfielders to score against, and the easiest for designated kickers to score against. Remember that Sheasel 185 last week? Yeah, the equal highest disposals in AFL history? Yeah, that's what the Tigers are giving up at the moment. But it wasn't just that. There's also been an LDU 157, an Anderson 147, a Rao 134, and a Dacos 177. Yeah, that's insane. This is a slaughterhouse. This is what is happening against Richmond right now. The reason I am recommending Baz over Max is simple. He's got more to play for. Why? Brownlow, baby. Bailey Smith is a genuine chance for the Brownlow, and I love targeting guys with something to play for in round 24. I fully expect Smith to come out and rip Richmond. Like, he's going to be aiming for a 40 disposal, 1 goal kind of game to get him the 3 votes. He wants the 3 votes, and don't you worry, he's going to give himself every chance for the 3 votes. And if Bailey Smith is getting close to 40 and a goal, you want that as your Supercoach captain or vice captain. But he's not the number one because the big boy is back from his concussion. Brody Grundy. I've already talked about the All-Australian ruck spot coming down to Gawn versus Grundy. Well, let's look at the Grundy side of the equation. A resurgent season that took a hit with last week's concussion, but a gigantic game here against West Coast could very well get him into the All-Australian team. He knows that. He wants that. I expect Brody to come out strong here in the last game of the year. Look, he can rest after this weekend. Sydney have no more games for the year. He can leave it all out there. But this weekend against West Coast is just a perfect storm. The Eagles are currently ranked as the 3rd easiest ruck matchup over the last 10 games. They've recently allowed a 132 to Tim English, a 131 to Max Gawn, a 123 to Luke Jackson while ruck sharing, and a 141 to Kieran Briggs. Some great scores there, but scores that have paled in comparison to what Brody Grundy has been doing lately. This is a guy who scored a 200-point Supercoach game recently. And as I said, he's still got plenty to play for from a personal perspective this weekend. Look for Brody to leave it all out there and just smash another massive score for his owners. Maybe even enough to get you over the line in your league finals matchup. Anyway, those are my favourite 10 captain options for the week. But as always, here's a bunch of names didn't quite make the cut. I think especially in your draft leagues, these guys are pretty good. So George Hewitt and Tom De Koning in that first game of the week against Essendon, I think they should both do well. Josh Dacos as well, like Melbourne have been giving up a lot to defenders, so maybe Josh Dacos is an option. Rosie, because Gold Coast are giving a fair bit up to defenders as well. And then I actually think there's quite a few Sydney players that you could go against West Coast. I've talked about Errol and... I've talked about Isaac and Brody, but also Chad Warner or Errol Goulden are option, or also Nick Blakey. If you listen to a coach's panel podcast 3 weeks ago, when I jumped on with MJ and Mini Monk, I was talking up Nick Blakey as a pod for Supercoach finals for the last 4 weeks. Well, he's got a 3-round average of 129 since I made that recommendation, and I think he could go even bigger this week. So Nick Blakey, definitely an option for draft. And a couple of the Giants defenders against St Kilda. So whether it's Lockie Whitfield, Lockie Ash, I'd probably be going with Whitfield if I was choosing one. And then Rowan Marshall, always an option, especially against Kieran Briggs. And then bring it home, Bailey Dale. Defenders have been going pretty well against Freo, so Bailey Dale could do fairly well. There we go. I am so hyped up by some of the captain options this week. There are a lot of highly owned players who have really good matchups and plenty to pay for personally. Whether it's All-Australian selection, a Brownlow medal, Coleman medal, a vital ladder position as their team's captain, I think we're going to see some highly motivated performances this week, which is going to lead to some massive Supercoach scores. There's going to be some poor coaches out there that are going to lose cash leagues with 2,800, 2,900 Supercoach scores. I can see it already. Now for me, I own all of my top 5, so it's a really hard choice. Do I VC Dacos? Do I save it for Smith? Do I save it for Grundy? I think I've ranked Grundy as my number 1, and I try and do that. So I'm probably going to save my VC for Grundy because I'm projecting him to be my highest scorer of the round. I'm then happy to back that up with a Bontempelli captain. I'm really confident with Bont this week. Although it's going to be a really nervous wait until Sunday night because Dacos and Baz will have already played and I will have passed them up and I will have been probably shaking in my boots. But I've got confidence that Grundy will make it even bigger. Anyway, leave some love in the comments for this last video of the season. Let me know how you found the research and production this year. It's always good to get feedback, especially if it's positive. Good luck this week. I hope you dominate your league grand finals and get that final ranking jump you want. Good luck.